Hey, inaccuracies or creative liberties of death by lightning. So I just saw episode 3. I'm a little congested as you can tell, so let's get into it. So this episode was about James Garfield and Conkling's rivalry coming up, but also Charles Gateau trying to get a job from Garfield. So it's called the Caucus Belly. So let's look at some of the scenes that I encountered that were a bit inaccurate. So at the inaugural ball, they do go to this Smithsonian Institute. Actually, the first time it's open, and there, Garfield and Crete don't actually end up staying that long. They, Crete is not a very big, or Lucretia, I should say, is not a very big social person. They do show in the scene a lot of Chester Arthur, like kind of being drunk, yada yada. He, he wasn't that way. He was a very social guy, not to this extent. Definitely creative liberty to make the character more stand out and interesting. Um, that was one of the big things I saw. Another thing we do see is Gateau actually ends up meeting Lucretia in the scene. So I don't believe that they met at the inaugural ball, but they did actually meet at some point when it was like a thing where people were meeting the president and his wife, and his wife did say something nice to Gateau. I can't remember what it is, but she did shake his hand. And it was something that stuck with Gateau really hard, like strongly, but it was not as personal as it was here. So one big thing they do focus on in this episode was Garfield making deals with Conkling, or Garfield, discussing with Conkling here about appointments. So Garfield immediately already kind of promised some positions, and they show in the show he's like, oh, all his appointments are being taken down. They're not all being taken down. Garfield does give up some of those appointments to Conkling and New York. However, he does give away key places. So the Navy, for instance, with Morton, he is someone, and the Treasury with Morton. They do intimidate them to step down because they tell them like, hey, you're not going to get this. So they kind of showed as like, oh, Garfield isn't helping them at all. He was, but Roscoe Conkling wanted more out of it than Garfield wanted to give up, more than he felt Conkling deserved. And he does try to take the customs house of New York away from him and give it to, I forget the name they gave it to, but they do that. So it's not all like, oh, Garfield just, wasn't wasn't giving anything, and then he slowly gave him stuff. No, he truly tried to give away some things, to the stalwarts. So one big thing here was Garfield says at one point, oh, the only way to beat a Hydra, I believe he was saying it to Blaine, is to, let's see if I can find a picture of them together, was to, cut off the head and, scorn the wound so it couldn't, escape. There's Blaine there. This is a good depiction because Garfield, there's some great political cartoons, and one of them is Garfield attacking a snake that has Conkling's head on it in the spoil system. Which could be referred to as a Hydra, which is a mythical beast, which if you cut one head, another one just spawns up. So if you cut out Conkling, it'll keep spawning up unless you take it out completely. So one big other key thing I noticed in this was Gateau was bothering Garfield a lot. And he goes to his office multiple times. They show it just once. He actually ends up going a few times. So, and it... Garfield will eventually, I think Garfield even mentions him in his diary at one point. Never says his name, but mentions how annoying he is and mentions he met a strange individual. Gateau's name will eventually his name will become so apparent at the White House that his name kind of gets like blacklisted. So that is something that does happen. And he actually harasses Blaine a lot. You can see Blaine right here. He stalks Blaine. He stalks Garfield, and Blaine follows him around. Kind of shows like his insanity. He is following behind them constantly, trying to ask about the consulship. And in the show, they show Blaine saying, "You're never going to get a thing." Blaine actually just kind of straight up told him like, "Never speak to me about the consulship in France again." They show it only a few times and make Blaine seem rude. No, he was harassed by Gateau over and over, letters and whatnot from him. The other thing was, you see at the end, he's buying a gun. And he's choosing between a regular and ivory. He's actually doing that because he, when he was at the museum, he's thinking, oh, this would look great in a museum case, which kind of really exemplifies the fact that he is insane. Those were the major inaccuracies I saw. This episode wasn't it definitely speeds stuff up and like has scenes connecting like his wife getting malaria and whatnot. Um, it doesn't happen that fast. There's Lucretia. She does not get malaria like obviously right away, but she does end up getting it, and it causes Garfield a great pain because he truly loves his wife. Um, but these scenes like they show him like happening one after another after another. That's not the case. So those are the biggest things I saw. I think this episode did a great job in like showing off Garfield versus Conkling, and also Cattell trying to beat with Garfield. Sorry. Yeah, I haven't seen episode 4 yet, but I'm interested to see how they will handle it because it is a he does get shot and it will take a long time for him to die. So I'm curious how they will show it off. But yes, Cattell was, as you can tell, this episode really focused on Cattell probably a lot more than Garfield, which is fair because this is probably the period where Cattell's going to get a lot of it. He's trying to get into his office, and he does get in multiple times, and he talks to Garfield because Garfield wanted to talk to every single person he could. Um, yeah, that was definitely something that they showed off well. All those people there, not qualified. And I found one part I loved it when he was saying like, oh, I was a stalwart for you. You should support me. Garfield doesn't like that. He doesn't like suck ups. Um, he wants people who are qualified. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else in particular I noticed about it. They did a decent job. Like I said, they took a lot of creative liberties, which is perfectly fine. You need to make this entertaining for someone who's not like me, who's super fascinated in this. But I love what they did. Um, and yeah, next time, I don't know. We'll see what the next episode looks like, and I'll tell you what I find in it that is a little inaccurate. This one probably had the least I noticed, but that was also because the progression. The only thing was the progression was like very quick. Kind of sped through those first months, especially like hit a lot of the stuff that he went through, but which was fine. Like I said, totally fine. It's kind of boring anyways if you aren't interested in this kind of era of history and in the political history of the Gilded Age, but they definitely, like I said, are doing a great job at setting up, Gatto's anger and how he's starting to go to a point of kind of constant like reverement of Garfield to I need to be the one to kill him. His delusion, I should say. So next time, we'll talk about episode 4. So see you guys then.